Hello, this is going to be another unboxing video of an action camera, and this time it is the Giscom, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, the Giscom Fancy R2 action camera, which advertises itself as being able to record all the way up to 4K resolution. Very excited to look at this camera because although the price tag was originally around $99, we did have a very generous $45 coupon on Amazon, which we applied a couple of weeks ago. And of course, those coupons can fluctuate, so the regular price was around $99. But the coupon will depend on really when you're buying it, which coupon is available, etc. I am, of course, not going to be able to guarantee that you're going to be able to receive a coupon of a specific value. So we had a very nice coupon that we applied, and that's why I thought, well, I have to get this camera because of the specifications. And now the question is simply, is this a good camera? And I'm going to let the viewer, I'm going to let you decide that after we show you some footage, sample photos, sample videos, etc. And then we can just take a look and see, with stabilization, without stabilization, 4K, 1080p, what we really think of this camera overall. So let's get started with this video. I did take the camera, the actual camera itself, out of the box just to look at it a little bit, but I really have not looked at any of the accessories. I just kind of packed it up back exactly the way it was. So aside from removing the plastic covering, just so that it'll be easier for me to unbox, I have not done anything with this camera. I did turn on the camera to make sure that it did have battery. So let's get started with this product unboxing. If you'd like to see sample footage and sample photos, please feel free to skip to the next part of this video. So what do we have here? The Giscom green color, a Fancy R2 action camera with some specifications all around the box. We're going to show you all the way up to 4K, 60 frames per second, 24 megapixel photos, remote control, dual touchscreen, which I think is very cool. And here, which is very interesting, we not only have the specifications here, which really makes me want to buy this made me want to buy this product, but we also have a description of the accessories, which is quite amazing. And here's the name of the camera, the Fancy R2, made by the company Giscom. So what do we have here? We have everything clearly packed and labeled very nicely, different types of accessories, and the camera itself with not one, but 2 batteries included. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the camera, then we'll look at the accessories. Of course, we're going to put one of the batteries in, but of course to show you that we do have two batteries with this camera. So here battery 1, battery 2. Just going to put that here. Very easy to take out the battery. Just slide this slot and this will pop up here, and then the battery will go here. Very nice. And of course, let's not forget, and let's do that first. You must separately purchase a micro SD memory card in order to store your footage. Remember, unless you buy some sort of special bundle, or unless it says so in the product description, you will need to separately purchase a micro SD memory card so that you can store footage, not only so you can store footage on your camera, but so that you can record footage to begin with. Otherwise, you won't be able to record any footage. In this case, we have a 32 gigabyte micro SD memory card, and I do find that most, if not all, action cameras will accept 32 gigabytes. A very small memory card, which must be purchased separately, in this case because there was no memory card included with the camera. So we're going to insert our memory card so that we can actually store footage on the device. So let's just try to see what we're going to do here. Most important part is just to make sure we insert it the right way, of course. Okay, there it is. Then just listen to the click sound. I'm going to take a thin metal object to insert the memory card. Just listen to the click. And there it is. Now we insert the battery. And we are, of course, ready to go. Hopefully the camera still has some battery life. We're going to take off the covering over here. There we go. Now we're going to take off the other covering, which is actually, you can see it as our second screen that is included with this, tripod. Second screen included on the camera, and here it is. So we're just going to take this off as soon as I'm able to. There we go. Now we have our screen, our second screen. You can see me in the background, and our first screen, which is here. We're going to take this off. Very conveniently says it right here. Device supports a micro SD memory card all the way up to 128 gigabytes, which is very convenient. So we're going to take this off. So now we are ready to use our camera. We've inserted the battery, we've inserted the micro SD memory card, which, as I said, in this situation must be purchased separately. And here's the JustCom Fancy R2, which we are all ready to use, and we also have some accessories here. So here's the camera itself. It's very lightweight. It's very very small. Oh, sorry. There we go. And there's even a little space for a tripod if you have that accessory, but I don't think a tripod is included with this camera. So we've got the camera. Let's just take a quick look at the accessories, and then we're ready to go outside, make some video tests. Will be the second part of this video. We're also going to show you the menu. So a lot of these accessories I'm really either not going to use. So just keep in mind that if you'd like to see maybe a detailed description of how these accessories work together, I would recommend watching someone else's video, maybe a video that someone posted on Amazon, or another review on YouTube, just because I won't really use a lot of these mounts, even though they are very helpful. So I'm just showing you them over here, but I'm not necessarily going to talk about them because I'm really just going to be holding the camera, or I might fix it to an accessory that I already have, like a handle or a floating handle or a tripod, but I already have those accessories and neither of those are included here. So all sorts of mounts that might be very helpful for you, but I'm not going to be using these. Of course, some of the accessories we will obviously need, like the USB cable, in order to use our camera. So charging it, transferring photos and videos from your camera to your computer, we will need those accessories. But and some of them will be even more useful than others for me, like this underwater housing, which we will be using to make sure that if we're going to submerge the camera underwater, it should be in the underwater housing. Not that that's necessarily going to guarantee that the camera is going to be 100% waterproof, but it will certainly help, and you don't want to submerge the camera without the underwater housing. So here it is, underwater housing. Just pull up here, the back, and then you can insert the camera here, and then just close it up. Close it up like that. So here's our underwater housing. Last but not least, basic accessories, very appropriately labeled because we have something in here that we absolutely need. Well, very cool case that we have here. And we also have a charging station for charging both of your batteries, which is phenomenal. So you can put two batteries here, and then you can connect the charging station with your USB cable, which is right here. Don't forget the USB cable is very important. We got this remote control to operate the camera remotely. So connecting this charging station to your USB cable allows you to, once you connect it to a laptop or computer tower, and you've inserted your batteries, charge both batteries at the same time very efficiently, probably faster than if you were just charging the batteries while the battery is in the camera. So you got your charging station, which closes up here, very cool, and you have your extra battery. So now all we have left to do is, after we've looked at all these accessories, we are simply going to look at the settings on this camera, and then we're going to go outside and make some videos. So again, if you'd rather not hear me talk about these accessories or talk about the camera itself, next part of this video will have sample videos recorded with this camera, which will be the most exciting part. Very high-end specifications we had described on the box, 24 megapixel photos. I think it said something about, did it say something about image stabilization? I think it did. Yeah, see? EIS, image stabilization, touchscreen. So this is very cool. We're going to definitely test the stabilization, which ideally should keep the footage from looking too shaky as you're walking around with the camera. So here's the camera, which supposedly records all the way up to 4K, 60 frames per second. The Fancy R2 made by the company JustCom. So we're just going to press this. Which power button is it? I don't know. I'm just pressing buttons. The middle one? Yes, the middle button. So now we're going to look at the settings, and then we're going to go outside and make some videos. So what I'm going to say is I watched a video on Amazon, and really there's a lot of reliance on the touch screen, which I personally don't like. I would prefer if we could only use these buttons that we have, because like the buttons on the camera, because I don't really like touchscreens on cameras. I just, for some reason, I learn much faster just the buttons themselves rather than having to hope that the touchscreen is going to be responsive each and every time. So we have here a setting. So let me just, I had kind of looked at this camera a little bit. So I had kind of looked at this camera a little bit, looked at the settings. So I realized that the first thing I should do to make it fair, to make it a true unboxing video is, even though I did pack up the camera, I should reset the camera back to its factory settings just so that we can take a look at the camera as it was out of the box. So we're going to try and do that right now. We're going to go through the settings and we're going to see if we can reset the camera. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to reset the camera. And see if we did that. Okay. So we've reset the camera. So I think we've reset the camera to factory settings. So let's just talk about this camera. We have one of the resolutions offered is 4K at 30 frames per second. So we're going to swipe up and get to some video settings. Oh, that's playback mode, sorry. We're going to swipe down and look at our preferences. Now, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? We have this beeping sound. Okay, swipe left or right to go to video mode, and then back to photo mode, and then back to video mode. And we also have zoom for photos, which is kind of cool. If it's digital zoom, then it's probably not the best kind of zoom. So let's go back to video mode. Video playback. I want to video settings. That's what I want. Okay. So image stabilization, we can turn that on or off. We're going to make some videos showing you what it's like when the camera looks stabilized. I'm not sure what some of these settings are. The touchscreen, again, it's not, for me, it's not ideal in terms of scrolling around through the settings. I'd rather have the physical buttons. I will choose the narrow view. I don't really like the wide angle. It creates kind of distortion fisheye effect. So we're going to do that. So I'm trying to get to the video settings, screensaver. So power off. Let's just make that. Let's just turn that off. Screensaver and power off. Okay, now let me just try to find the video resolution settings. Oh, I think I know where they are. We want to know how we can change the resolution on our camera. So we're just going to click here where it says 4K. And now you can adjust to scrolling left to get to 1080p, 2.7K, etc. And then here we can adjust the amount of frames per second. So let's just have the camera at 4K at 30 frames per second for now, which was the default. And here we can see different types of video settings like slow motion, time lapse, etc. Let's go back. Okay, we can go back. So these buttons, this one's probably for recording, this one's for the power off. And we can also go to our video settings here by clicking that middle button and then swipe left or right to go to the photo settings. So that's all it really is. If you want to get to video settings, click here on the resolution. Same thing with photo settings, swipe left, and then click here for the how many megapixels you'd like. And then to get to the settings like image stabilization, you just have to scroll, you have to scroll down and then click on preferences. And then you'll find your image stabilization settings, screen timeout settings, etc. So now we're ready to use this camera. We're going to make some videos at different resolution settings just to show you what the footage looks like recorded with this camera, and I'll be sure to say at what resolution we're recording and whether we have image stabilization turned on. This has been an unboxing video of the Fancy R2 camera made by, oops. This has been an unboxing video of the Fancy R2 action camera made by the company Giscom, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Very excited to try this camera. High-end specifications for the price that we purchased it for. Lots of accessories, including underwater housing, and a remote control, an extra battery, and a charging station for your for 2 batteries. Some other accessories like the remote control you might not use, but if you have a tripod or a handle, definitely can kind of combine some of these accessories to use with your handle or your tripod. And so here it is. Purchased it on Amazon. Regular price was, I think at the time, it was $99. There was a coupon. The coupons can vary, so just keep in mind I'm not, as I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to pay a particular price for this camera. This is a JustCom Fancy R2. Video test will follow in the next clip, recorded at different resolutions and maybe some with image stabilization. There will be a separate video just with video tests. This has been an unboxing video and just to show you some of the settings on this camera. Video tests will follow shortly. Hello, this is a 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the JustCom Fancy R2 action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the JustCom Fancy R2 action camera that you see here. 1080p, 60 frames per second video test. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. With the JustCom Fancy R2 action camera, this is what we're recording with right now. Got this mirror. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test at 60 frames per second. With the JustCom Fancy R2 action camera that you see here. This is what we're recording with right now. 1080p video test at 60 frames per second. With the narrow viewing angle, there's a wide, I think medium and wide, medium, and narrow. We have the narrow viewing angle to minimize the fisheye effect and to minimize distortion, any distortion. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test at 60 frames per second on this Sunday afternoon. .1080p video test at 60 frames per second with this JustCom Fancy R2 action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the JustCom Fancy R2 action camera, recently purchased on Amazon. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .7K resolution, 30 frames per second with the JustCom Fancy R2 action camera. 2.7K, 30 frames per second. .7K, 30 frames per second. 2.7K resolution at 30 frames per second. 4K video test, 30 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera, recently purchased on Amazon. This camera has image stabilization, not currently enabled, but we will make a video test with image stabilization. Image stabilization is currently off. This is a 4K video test, 30 frames per second video test. 4K resolution at 30 frames per second. .4K resolution, 30 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera. .4K resolution video test with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera. 4K video test, no image stabilization on this video. No image stabilization. Currently 4K video test at 30 frames per second. This camera has a wide variety of video settings all the way up to 4K at 60 frames per second. This is a 4K video test at 30 frames per second. .4K 30 frames per second video test. .4K resolution, 30 frames per second video test. .4K resolution at 30 frames per second. .4K resolution, 30 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera. Hello, this is a 1080p video test at 60 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera that you see here. 1080p video test at 60 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera pictured over here. This is what we are recording with, not editing this video, just uploading it to YouTube. 1080p video test all the way at 60 frames per second. .1080p resolution, 60 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera. Extended video test. .1080p video test at 60 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera, which is pictured right here. This is the camera that we are recording with, the Fancy R2 action camera. 1080p video test at 60 frames per second. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the Juscom Fancy R2 action camera. Extended video test. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. With the Giscom Fancy R2 action camera that you see here. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Extended video test. .1080p video test at 60 frames per second with the Giscom Fancy R2 action camera that you see. Video test, extended video test being uploaded to YouTube, not being edited. Action camera which records all the way up to 4K resolution at 60 frames per second. This is just a 1080p video test at 60 frames per second. So you can have an idea of what the video quality looks like. Decide for yourself if you're interested in purchasing this camera, which also has time-lapse, slow motion, has a remote control accessory, 2 batteries, and a touch screen, and also a front-facing screen. And image stabilization, which we will also be testing. This camera does have image stabilization, which is currently turned off. This has been a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the Giscom Fancy R2 action camera.